I grew up as a people pleaser, and then I spent 10 years in public education. You're not allowed to have an opinion on anything without fear of retribution from parents and students and admin. So my system is very much hardwired to be like, don't share that piece of information that might possibly offend somebody. Yes, there's still going to be a me that is performative to some degree, that's going to not say all of the things that are on my mind. Then there's going to be me that's the more raw and authentic, the one that my close friends and family would see. And for me, I'm trying to close that gap of like, I don't want to be performing 90% of my life and then get home and get to breathe and like not be entirely sure who I am.
Yeah, hello, here's Christina Gott from the Online Writing Club. And since we're also like in the middle of the Substack Notes Kickstarter Bootcamp, we have tomorrow someone who is, in my view, really rocking Substack Notes. I found him on Reddit. I was doing some research for all my Substack articles, and there was Ryan Hennessey. So what he did was he was answering some questions and stuff, and he was linking back to his Substack. And then I thought, wow, this is impressive. He has already like about 8,000 subscribers, which is cool. And he's also constantly publishing short form stuff on Notes, which gets lots of engagement. So Ryan Hennessey is here today. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Super. Where are you tuning in from today?
Minnesota, United States.
Oh, yeah, this is cool. And I'm in Germany. And so I always love like this international connection. Could you share a bit more about who you are, Ryan? Or maybe we can start like from this Reddit community aspect, because Reddit, for instance, when we were talking about like AI yesterday, we did this, is also like one of the number one cited sources at the moment when it comes to AI, because of course there actual humans are talking with humans, and this is something that AI prefers. So AI wants you to write like a human. How did you start writing there on Reddit, and how are you maybe using this also for your Substack growth?
So yeah, Reddit's been one of those things that's been just natural in terms of if I have a question, I go there and ask it. And then I also try to reciprocate where I answer questions. And so Substack has been a space where I've felt confident in terms of putting a little bit out there. My background is I was a teacher for the last 10 years before I walked away and kind of leaned into this world of like creating something of my own. And so Reddit feels like a natural space for me to go and kind of give guidance when I'm able. And I'm curious which Reddit thread you found, because typically I haven't been actually creating my own out there. I've been just answering other people's questions. Is that something that you found?
I was looking for people's opinion on growing on Substack Notes. And yeah. I could imagine maybe you were, I think you were the one posting it. And then people were replying to it, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Because I've tried a little bit of everything, right? Where I've been the one that's starting the thread and starting the conversation. And then more recently, I haven't actually been creating the threads. I've just been going in and answering questions. And then there's a ton of threads that build off of that. Yeah. And so with Substack, today is just a backstory. Today's April 9th, and exactly April 9th of last year was like my first time showing up on Substack Notes.
Wow. So, wait. Ryan, you don't know me yet. So there's always some confetti. So there's some confetti for Ryan. Let me go. Some more confetti. My hubby always hates this, but I love confetti. I'm a sucker for confetti. Wow. So 1 year now on Substack.
Yes. Yep. And so I was working with a mentor, and he told me like, commit. If you're going to commit to a year. Can you do that of like showing up every single day on Substack Notes? And I feel like to some degree, it's the first thing in my life where I'm just like, this is my commitment and I'm going to stick to it. And I stuck to it. And with zero writing background, I mean, like I said, I was in education for the last 10 years. Yeah, things have really grown a lot. And just that consistency has built both my voice and my writing and my, just kind of my background of all of these stuff that I feel really important is to put into my message. And it's grown a lot.
And this is your Substack newsletter, The Unsteady Ascent, which I think is lovely. You can see this here that you're apparently at the moment live with me, which is cool. I also think that the short bio you have here is pretty clear. Maybe you can share a bit more about your Substack approach, your mission, and also more about like your writer thumbprint. You told us already that you're coming from education and teaching and stuff.
Well, when I left teaching, I really got fed up with this idea of like not teaching what is meaningful to me and what's meaningful in my heart. And so when I came to Substack and started writing, it kind of was, to a large extent, it was a classroom that I felt like the world kind of needed, where I could be unfiltered, where I didn't have to choose my words and I didn't have to write for anybody other than myself, and write about the things that I'm passionate about. learning and exploring myself. And so the main threads that I pull on are reclaiming your life. So if you have a life that you feel like you're living that's no longer your own, you feel like you've been on autopilot and you feel stuck, the main threads that I pull on are really exploring the how do you take that back? How do you actually reclaim your agency, reclaim your voice? And it doesn't require a dramatic exit, but it requires doing very intentional, sometimes difficult, uncomfortable things repeatedly and remaining committed to that.
But I think you learn somehow through all the years of teaching stuff to people and through your own life, right? So you can really share your own life experience.
Some of the main stories that I've kind of pulled back from are just, almost 10 years ago now, I went through a divorce that was very challenging for me, but it was also, in retrospect, one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because it was this period of my life in which I actually took control, or I decided, what do I actually want to do with my life? And I started building towards that. And then also more recently, just last year, is when I walked away from teaching, which is this career that I absolutely loved. And I went to a PhD program and was trying to get my doctorate, and I was teaching night classes, and I was trying to become the best teacher. And then I kind of started asking myself why, because I was burning myself out, and I was this job that once, grew me and made me feel like entirely fulfilled, became this thing that was holding me back and making me feel miserable. And that's when I left. And I left in this attempt to figure out, like, how do I create a life for myself that is actually what I'm doing what I love, and also I get to stop filtering and shrinking myself for other people.
And this is now with Substack really like the first time that you're building an audience just for yourself. So you don't have like an audience on when you're a science teacher that, for instance, is on LinkedIn or any other platform. So it's really that you're building like from the inside out, let's call it like this.
Yeah.
Like from 1 year, from zero to these subscribers, 8,000. Wow.
Okay. Correct. Yeah. So I basically have, non-existent followers on any other platform. This was just the one that I just consistently, and it's funny because I have tried, right, in the efforts of like, I think I want to write a book and like build a platform. And I've gone to these other platforms and tried to put myself out there. And for whatever reason, Substack just feels like the one that just feels like it doesn't take enormous amounts of energy for me to put myself out there, because it actually feels like I get energized by the conversations that I have and the depth that I get to, and the nuance that is people actually crave here, versus some of the other ones are just kind of like, make a 10-second video and make it rock. And it just ends up being a little bit more draining on those other platforms for me.
What I love about your writing, as you can see, this is fucking hot, beautifully written. Thank you for sharing. This is so, how can we call it, like Reddit-y somehow, because it's superhuman. It's super you. We have the feeling that you're sharing your life experience. You're letting us in your life. It's also about like vulnerability. So for instance, yesterday with the bootcamp, we were talking about exactly this. And that sometimes when you're putting yourself out there and you're sharing your, let's say, most vulnerable self or so, you have to be a bit careful, because you never know what feedback you're going to get. And if you're, for instance, taking this cold fucking stuff, so usually I never like curse or so. But also, for instance, you're going to love tomorrow Ellen Share, because she's also someone who's dropping like F-bombs and stuff. And America, I know it's a big thing. In Germany, you don't usually do it. Otherwise, someone would, like thrown at you like, oh my God, this is definitely not a lady if I would do this in Germany. But if you're reading something from Ryan, this is just one I picked here, then it always feels like as if you would know my pain points, and it could also be something that you like went through all the Reddit threads and know like what the pain points are, and then touching on them, talking about these pain points, and then you're somehow helping people with this. This is my feeling about it. And this is why I was wondering whether like Reddit also plays a huge role when you're writing, like whether you may be going through the Reddit thread or you're asking whatever, like AI or so to help you like doing the research and stuff.
No, actually, it really doesn't. Typically when I'm writing from my own experience. I'm actually a terrible writer if I'm sitting down and writing something that I don't want to write about. And so usually what it is I sit down when I feel inspired to write down on a piece and to go deeper. A lot of times what happens actually is I use my notes almost as like they're almost like these little seeds that I drop. And then sometimes the inspiration just grows after the notes are out there and the topics are out there, because I have so many brilliant conversations with people that enrich and they poke holes, and they make my understanding of whatever it is that I'm exploring so much deeper just through the notes and the conversations that happen in the comment.
I really have the feeling also when I'm reading or going through your notes thread, then I have the feeling that you're really like somehow telling a story, and then you could also like take all the notes and putting them in a long form post or something like this. Or maybe you're taking the long form post and then putting it into short form writing.
No, exactly what you're saying. So a lot of times that's what I'll do is I'll have the different parts of a story as notes. And I'm like, this is when I write a note, I try to keep it just one succinct idea and then put it out there. And what I love about that is then I labor over the word choice and I get it exactly how I want for this little, usually it's like 7 or 8 lines. And I get it exactly how I want. And then those pieces are the larger part of a story that I'm working on for a long form. And then I always tweak them to make sure that they actually fit into the actual context of what I'm writing. But I love it because I get to spend really dedicated time on this really small section of writing. And then when I drop that into my long form article, it's like exactly how I want it. And it's perfect and it just flows and it feels great in that regard.
So really, if you're checking out Ryan's notes and you know why I picked him and what I'm doing with the Online Writing Club is I'm like, someone called me like a curator. Somehow I am a curator. So I try to bring you like the most inspiring voices. And with Ryan, really, I encourage everyone to go through his notes feed because everything he's sharing is, from my opinion, super unique. You might have heard this already, like when it comes to nervous system stuff or whatever, like listen closely to your heart and stuff. I also love this one here with your little one here in the snow and stuff. So it feels very personal and it feels so Ryan. Do you also have the feeling that you really have already found your voice online and this writer thumbprint? And also, what about your science background? Do you somehow have the feeling that there's also whatever some part of the science background now in your notes and Substack writing?
Yeah, those are great questions. In terms of my voice, I feel like I'm almost there. I feel like over the last year, and the notes writing has been so tremendous for it because every day, that practice of just sitting down and writing every single day and capturing the thoughts that are like going on throughout the day in my notes app on my phone and then turning that into a note that I actually post has really helped me, curate my voice and be confident. And even just the swearing, right? As a public school teacher, that is the complete no-no. And like to some degree, it's shooting myself in the foot if I want to go back to that position. But it feels authentic and it feels real. And so that part feels really good. The science, I don't know that I necessarily incorporate the science background into my writing other than maybe the academia standpoint of like really studying like what things are working really well and what things are not. I take all of my notes and I feed them, I put them into a spreadsheet and I feed them to like an AI analyzer of like what things are going well because I put in all the data of like all of the shares and all of the comments and all of the different statistics that I can get. And then I feed them and they look for patterns and then I'm able to pull out the patterns. And so I try to approach it through a scientific lens in that regard, but I don't necessarily write too often about science simply because it doesn't seem to align. I have said some things, in the past and maybe I haven't done it in quite a while. So, but I love that. I love, the piece that I'm working on right now is actually about the night sky. And it's about how like being in these spaces that make you feel small somehow have a way of making your problems feel insignificant and therefore empowering you without making you feel insignificant. That's my little science tie back.
Yeah, this is something that I loved. Like if you can somehow like infuse your writing. So there are many who have their 9-to-5s, their skills, their abilities, which are not only linked to the 9-to-5, of course, the corporate world. It's also like an ability you built over years and years, decades of your life. And then, of course, similar to your divorce, this is also an experience with your kid or kids. Do you have kids or one kid?
Yeah, one daughter. Yep.
You have one daughter. Like this is also an experience, and then you're bringing this all at some point, no matter where you are, whether you are whatever, like in the 20s or whether you are in your 80s, or we have some even now in their 90s. No matter where you are, you're putting this all in your writing and this is infused by it. And this is why I love to learn. I told you about Karen Salmonson, for instance. She's now 65. She calls herself old, but she's really someone where you have the feeling like she's so fine with, like, for instance, sharing what she did in her 20s or 30s with all the narcissistic and toxic relationships she had or her ex and stuff. I think with your writing, this is like similar, that we always have the feeling, okay, this comes really from a specific source. Coming back to the writer thumbprint, which I think is becoming more and more important in 2026. the reason why we do all this, or maybe you can tell me why you're doing this, there has to be a reason, and it means different things for different people. What does it mean for you, Ryan? Why, you told us about the mentor when we started, who said to you, like something like write 52 newsletters in a row and what should change your life, as many do. Like, and it's true. You can see this from Ryan. Maybe there were some moments where you also had like a dark time and thinking no growth was there and no one would care about your notes. And now look at you. And we have April 2026 and you're rocking it, Maybe you can share a bit more about this, because this is something that I would love to learn more.
The way that I actually started writing was in private through a therapist, right? When I was going through a really dark time, and they were like, the best way for, and that's when like that note that you were just looking at about like writing is nervous system work. That's where it actually all started for me, was writing when I was in a really dark time and trying to get myself a little bit of separation, pull my ego out of it, to write the other person's narrative from their point of view. So it kind of forces empathy and allows you to process it all. And so for me, even when I go back now, I mean, that divorce, that difficult period, the most difficult period of my life was 8 years ago at this point. But even when I was writing about it a few months ago, there's still like, I'm finding these little charges and I'm finding these things that are going on inside my body, and it's allowing me to work through those that I didn't even know. Like, I assumed it was all good and I moved past that and I've learned my lessons and it's great. But you never quite do until you actually go through, and there's always a little something left there to work through. And so for a lot of the stuff that I write about, it's like, if I'm writing about things in marriage, it's usually because something in my life is difficult regarding marriage. And the more that I write about it, and the more, even once I put a note out into the world, and then other people, again, get into that comments of the interactions of like their perspective and poking holes and things that I say, I love that. That's the best part. That's the gold to me of like, I will always be the student as much as I am talking about being the teacher. It's like, I will always be a student, and that allows me to learn and grow in that capacity. So that's been kind of my why in terms of putting my message out there.
Yeah, and I think, again, like this why is so important, like the source where everything is coming from, because we also learned like in the last couple of days, really, that there might be like this performance like this person, like similar to me with the On Writing Club and stuff, like you somehow have like to perform, meaning we're doing the live now, later there's the boot camp, and I have the newsletter and stuff. But there's still like some part of you, however you want to call it, like this more personal part or so, which you really have to protect somehow, So first, of course, like this more professional self or so can't become so big. It's taking over like 90% of your life or so. And then at the same time, you have in this time also to be a bit careful about what you're putting out there, and maybe being also clear or strategic about like the narrative you're sharing. So for instance, when you're talking about divorce, there might be others who wouldn't dare to talk about their divorce. Or we have, for instance, someone who now dares, after, I think, I don't want to lie, after 5 years or so, 6 years, to talk about her great divorce. But when she was in the thick of it, you never ever would have thought she could come to a point where everything would be fine again, And now she's helping others. So this aspect of like this why, and then this narrative is very important, I think. And then when it comes to community, what do you think about this? What is the type of community you want to build on Substack?
Okay, so a couple of questions. The one that you were talking about is kind of the performance you versus like the authentic you. And for me, what I'm realizing is the more distance there are between those two yous, the more friction there is in your life, and the more it feels like you have this incongruence that you're trying to work through. And so for me, I've been trying to remove that distance of like, yes, there's still going to be a me that is performative to some degree, that's going to not say all of the things that are on my mind. Then there's going to be me that's the more raw and authentic, the one that would, my close friends and family would see. And for me, I'm trying to close that gap of like, I don't want to be performing, 90% of my life and then get home and get to breathe and like not be entirely sure who I am. So that's been a lot of the work that I've been doing here on Substack, is like, and I've had the conversations even with the swear words, right? So I have a lot of F words every once in a while in my notes, and I try to not, it's never like racial slurs or anything that's going to be offensive, but it's like a punctuation in terms of like, I'm really passionate about this, and that's how it comes through. And it's felt good to some degree to have a couple of people that are like, for instance, yesterday somebody said, your intelligence is being smothered by the vulgarity. And I'm like, but it was, I felt confident in my response to that. And I'm like, you are so welcome to have that opinion that you're like, I won't even read anything if it has an F word in it. And like, I can hold space for that, and I can agree with that. And also I felt really confident in just being like, actually, that's like the most raw, authentic version of me. And I completely respect you for not doing that. But it felt good to kind of have that confidence in terms of my voice. If you were to go back to like the beginning of my notes, they still weren't like, swear words or anything like that, but they were a little bit more unleashed. And it started out as I was talking to like my former students, right? The former students that I know are out in the world, because I have a couple thousand former students at this point that are, young adults that are out in the world and they're doing their thing. And I'm like, what are the lessons that I want them to learn? And it's evolved now. More of my ideal reader would be somebody who's likely in their late 20s and beyond, who's gone through their life checking all of the boxes, feeling like they got everything on paper that looks and feels good to somebody outside, but feels kind of empty to them. And at some point, we all find ourselves in that spot. At some time, whatever path that we're choosing, even if we're actively choosing it, we go too far down that road and we feel like this isn't what I want anymore. And so for me, the ideal reader, the person that I'm trying to reach, is somebody who's gone so far down that path that they've begun to know that there's a better way and to want to reach for that, and then to try to give them the inspiration, the perspective, and the empowerment to actually go after that life that's truly them and truly theirs and feels fulfilled.
Oh yeah, this is very good. I think this is like a service for the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds. For instance, dreaming of being Ferrari and super yacht rich. Somehow with social media, I always have the feeling like, is this then the actual goal for them? Somehow with social media or so, when you're going through the feed or on TikTok, you might have somehow lost what your true values are, or what your true goals in life are. And to come back to this and what you said, authentic self and this performance self, I also think often when we're like reaching the goals we thought would be ours, then we're like, oh, well, yeah, I now became, for instance, in my corporate life, I now became a senior consultant. Wow, with my own team and like in my 20s. Oh, yeah, and exciting. But is this really life, you know what I mean? Especially when it comes to corporate. And you also like left the cubicle, and I guess you left it then for a reason. And now with your Substack, do you think it's like a solo one-person business for you, which you would also call a business? Or is it more really like you started with journaling and now it's something that you're also sharing publicly?
I would love for it to become a business. I wouldn't say it's a business quite yet. I think I'm in this liminal space still. I'm 1 year and 1 month removed from leaving the classroom. It's still very fresh in terms of building the audience and just writing and just the whole process. And I have so much to learn about marketing and about outreach and about like monetization and all of that. And doing so without feeling like I'm selling my soul. There's just kind of in between for me where it's like, as soon as I try to monetize something, I kind of feel like I'm being disingenuous. So I still have a lot to learn with it. I would love for the community to continue growing and for it to grow into, funnels for ways in which I can continue being in that educator role, whether that's coaching or I have these retreats or I want to write a book. I have all of these aspirations and I'm still kind of following the breadcrumbs in terms of what comes next and what feels right and what this is going to grow into. And so I'm saying yes to opportunities like this to see what grows and see what feels right. So I appreciate, again, you having me on here.
And I think you definitely belong to the category. This is like the category I love the most. Like I knew Ryan when, so this is for me like the moment. And Ryan, have you already turned on the paid button for your newsletter?
I have.
Yeah. Okay. And do you have like already like a good amount of paid subscribers, or is it just like a handful?
15.
I think this is a great start. So the next milestone would be to make it at least 100 to become a bestseller. And from what I'm seeing is really from your notes, from your posts, this is all like this one writer thumbprint. Now I guess maybe you need to like beef this up, like your paid tiers and stuff. What do you offer paid subscribers?
Right now, it's just been the paywalled posts. So I do every other. Yep, every other would be paid. But then the other thing that I'm working on, one of the things that I am working on quietly, and I haven't actually announced it on Substack, but is I do want to put together like a digital product, which is how to grow on Substack without selling your soul. Like, how can you apply strategy and be strategic and be without jumping onto all of the the quick hits and getting an aligned audience and all of that. So that's a piece. I want to start building some things like that I can also offer for paid subscribers that they have access to, or as one-off individual products if they wanted to buy those.
Wouldn't it be better to have some type of like life audit or so? So if I would be this 20 or 30-year-old or so coming to you and reading you, and then the question first is here on Substack, is this really the person, like the 20 or 30-year-old? Because if you're looking like at the audience, there are also lots of 50 plus. And I could imagine that here with your, like, I call it content, but with your essays and your writing, you would also attract lots of 50 plus. So if I were you, what I would do, I would ask who actually is reading my piece. You could poll your audience. I don't know if you've ever done this. So I would click on poll and send them a poll. You can also, for instance, include this in your welcome email. So you're gonna, whenever you, this is like an automation, and this is like the welcome email is like the number one read email you're gonna send to your audience. Like, let's say it's 90% or 80%, open rate, which is incredible. So somehow you can capitalize on it. However, people just skim. And so maybe a poll would be great, asking, who are you there now in my community? Because I've grown this like from 0 to 8,000, and I would love to learn more about you. And for this, you are the scientist here. I bet you know exactly how to create this poll and what questions to ask to then, based on this, pain points, which you apparently know so much already about, then say, you know what, you're going to get a live audit. Or I have the feeling it's more about like people maybe who want to talk about their issues and their problems, maybe their dreams, and then like in a group coaching session or so, or you don't need to coaching session, but in a cohort or so on a monthly basis, maybe meeting with all the others, and then checking whether this feels still aligned to the values I have and to the thumbprint in my life. Because we all have this unique thumbprint, and we're often getting, we lose touch to like this younger version of ourselves because there are so many filters, and. Maybe this could be something. For instance, Karen Salmonson, she started growing. She's in the category philosophy, and she started growing when she really beefed up her paid newsletter, which meant then she had already, for instance, courses, which she, similar to what you said, then started offering. Or you also get access to whatever, like the first chapter of a book, something like this. And then, of course, like what you said, like all the whole newsletters without like a paywall and stuff. When you're wondering why you're not growing, you really should go one step back and ask yourself, okay, who is actually my audience? Are the pain points I think they have are the real pain points? And what can I offer them? Right. And if we're just thinking maybe like, you could summarize this. You started exactly 1 year ago. Again, congratulations. This is the birthday now. 1 year birthday from your newsletter and writing. And was there like a moment where you experienced like a massive growth or so? And how did you start it? Was it like just one subscriber and no one cared about your notes? Could you maybe share a bit more about this? Because often people think, oh, Ryan, he's already at 8,000 subscribers. He's doing so well on notes, la la la. But it's always important to also look behind the scenes.
So the way that I actually started was I wrote a series of speeches for my students. Once I knew that I was leaving the classroom, I created what I called my grand finale of teaching. And in that, I wrote a series of basically social emotional inspirational speeches for my students. And so that's how I started, was I just posted all of those on Substack once every other week or something. And I did share that out to my Instagram and my Facebook. And I think everybody that was like invested in me in my real life came over, which was all of like 18 people, right? So within the first week, I had 18 subscribers. I was like, yeah. And then it was just a really long, slow building of, typically in a day, I would spend twice as much energy on outreach as I would on my own notes. I would be engaging with other writers and commenting on their work, and through that kind of building a community that actually supported. And it took, I don't even know how many months, probably 4 months before I even crossed 100 subscribers. So it was just this really slow growth. And then it felt like after I got to 100, it was about 2 weeks later, I got to 200. And then it was like 3 weeks later, I got to 500. And then at 500, it just kind of like something hit, right? One or two notes kind of caught fire, and then that fire kind of spread across everything. And so there were definitely a few notes in there that went, viral. I'm not sure what the threshold of viral is, but that when one or two of those things hit, everything seemed to just all of a sudden work, and it was clicking. And I continued that outreach until I started getting past the point of having like 100 notifications a day. Then I stopped responding to everything and everybody. But my general rule, again, that I was working with a mentor who is well versed in this world, and he was saying like, you got to respond to everything at first, right? Just like keep that engagement high, and it built. And then it wasn't until I think it was August of last summer that I all of a sudden I like crossed 500 and I'm like, wow, this is kind of getting real. This is feeling like there's, like something's actually tracking. And then instead of just getting like 1 or 2 subscribers a day, it was like, sometimes it was as much as like 100 subscribers a day. And sometimes it was like a consistent 15 to 20. But it felt like I could now see if this trajectory even slowed down a little bit, but stayed the same, that this could be a real path for me to continue following.
And now you could also think, oh, yeah, well, the algorithm loves Ryan, but the idea of the algorithm, like do some myth busting here, is really that the algorithm based on your behavior, your own behavior. So for instance, if you're going to say, oh, you know what, I'm seeing Christina as an example, me, all the time in my feed, I hate this, as an example. Yeah, why are you seeing me? I guess you are then a beginner, you're just starting out, and then Substack is showing you my notes because they are around like becoming a better writer, showing up on notes, showing up on Substack, growing on Substack, something like this as an example. And then bringing you Substack voices and also like inspiring voices when it comes to book publishing and stuff. This could be one of the reasons. And then being like prolific, of course, does help, definitely helps. When you're also like checking like the most successful people using notes, like people who have 1,000 paid subscribers or tens of thousands of subscribers, they at least post 1 note per day, which is now, as we have this new feature with scheduling, so easy. Again, if you just want to do like some batch creating, I don't really love it. Substack, of course, could easily now with, let's say, the software developer team being on Red Bull at the moment with AI, of course, they could easily, I guess, drop more and more features. But I think it's a start. They're gonna ship more, I think. So maybe this is something, And also, when it comes again to posting, I would really say at least once per day, which is good. And then really interacting with others. And again, it has really to do what the algorithm is showing you in the feed with what you want to see. And then if you don't want to see, for instance, beginner stuff, as you has already outgrown this, simply whatever, like and restack and comment on stuff that is more than about your topic, whether it's fishing, whether it's bird watching, whether it's planets, it's science, whatever it is. And this easily then educates the algorithm that is a child what you want. Okay, this is like very important. And the same goes then for Ryan. So Ryan started, and then the algorithm needed to be educated on what Ryan actually was posting about. And then suddenly there was like this click moment, this light bulb moment where then the algorithm knew, okay, this is what Ryan's, again, like this is my DNA or writer thumbprint is. And based on this, then he's now showing Ryan to more people. And this is like, Notes is like social media, but it's also like interest media. So Gary Vee is now on Substack. I know you also shared a visual from him. And he also said already like years ago that we're now entering like this age where we have interest media, where it's really about interest. And it's not more about how many subscribers, followers, or whatever has Ryan or who is he connected with. It's really more about if the algorithm thinks what Ryan is sharing about making your nervous system feeling calmer, as an example, then it's going to show multiple people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, specific notes, and then they're going to like and so on. So if you want to change your situation, then I would always go with, and you want to change your feed, I would always say restack, share, comment, because still like just a super small percentage of all the people are doing this. Then Heidi is asking, were you ever afraid of saying exactly what you wanted? Were you afraid of offending or being seen as too much? And if so, how did you get past it, or did you just let it all out from the beginning?
I grew up as a people pleaser, and then I spent 10 years in public education, which you're not allowed to have an opinion on anything without fear of retribution from parents and students and admin and all of the systems that be. So my system is very much hardwired to be like, don't share that piece of information that might possibly offend somebody. Or I can't tell you how many essays I've written where I'm like offering advice or like, do this or don't do this, or you might be in this situation. And then I have these like paragraphs of like, oh, but this isn't to minimize this. And I try to soften the blow a little bit because I'm terrified that somebody's going to see it and they're going to be like, you're excluding this group of people, or you're not, what about my situation? And I've had to do a lot of like walking back of just being like solid of like, I'm going to have to put trust back into the readers and trust in myself that if that happens, that I can address that situation and move forward from there. The first time I wrote about my divorce, I hit publish, and I think I went back to the app like 3 times that night, and I'm like, I can't, maybe I should edit this. And I didn't sleep that night, and I had to like get up in the morning and go for a run to like work through that frantic energy. And as soon as the comments started coming in of like, thank you so much for actually opening up and sharing about this extremely painful period of your life. And I've went through something very similar, and to hear your story gives me hope, and to kind of see how it actually lifts people up. So each time I share something vulnerable, it scares the shit out of me, to put it frankly. Every time that I do it anyways, I gain the confidence in myself to like hold that ground and to continue doing it.
Amen to this. I love this so much because, there are so many people afraid of putting themselves out there. And we talked about this factor, and that many, they need or want to protect this most authentic self, which is good. When you have an audience, an existing audience, why not also with your very personal and vulnerable topic, bringing this audience to Substack and share this. And also, if you have just a following, which means somehow nothing, you can still capitalize on it and take these followers you have and try to bring them on the platforms to build this flywheel. This is also something to learn from. If you're now thinking like about the top 3 tips or so from you being like the Substack scientist, Ryan, what would be the top tips for others beginners who just starting out on Notes and on Substack in general?
I mean, the first one we've already talked about to death is just that consistency of showing up on Notes every single day. I've written a lot of essays, and when I compare my Notes subscribers to my essay subscribers, it's like 97% of growth has come from Notes alone. The second one that is overlooked is probably the outward energy. So it's like you were writing, you have a message that you're passionate about sharing with the world. And so it makes sense for you to want to focus on writing in your craft and like put that out into the world. But there is something to be said about, and I'm experiencing this myself, even almost a year into it, is, when I kind of get into these lulls of just like I show up for like 10 minutes, I write a note, and then I just sign off of the app. Everything responds. So if you're actually looking at your stats and you're looking at your growth slows as soon as you stop that outward energy. You stop interacting with other people. You stop doing any kind of collaboration, because you really are kind of stimulating those connections. And when they are commenting with you and you're commenting with them, you show up in each other's feeds. And as soon as that lever kind of dials down, it dials down for them as well. Third one would be share the thing that you're scared to say. I mean, share it, be honest with it. If you need to write from a pseudonym or something to build that muscle, do that. But you'd be so surprised by the amount of people that are actually like, they resonate with your message. They feel seen, they feel validated. Even if it's like your deepest, darkest fear, you're not alone in that. And it actually is energizing when other people are like, I feel seen in that. Thank you so much for speaking that truth. I know that had to be hard. And just by witnessing from the readers or being witnessed, there's this profound power of just like an exhale that happens after you put it out into the world, and slowly but surely you become a lot more confident in your writing.
One last thing, if you're now looking at your Substack and your Notes, and we would have in a year, so your second anniversary, we would have in a year another interview. Where do you think you will be in a year with your newsletter, not just in regard to the growth when it comes to subscribers and paid subscribers, but also like on a more like emotional level? How will you feel?
I'm going to answer this as honestly as possible, and I don't know, and that excites me. My life is kind of in this like I said, following the breadcrumbs, doing the next right thing. In the last month, even, my wife and I have talked about like buying land and like building a house and a huge garden and splitting it with other people. And I could see very much the trending of my writing kind of being following this journey. And that didn't necessarily pan out quite yet. And now we're talking about selling all of our stuff and traveling the world for a year. And again, right, like, I don't think I'm going to be talking like from about my divorce during that time, right? I'm going to be like, hey, I'm having these cultural experiences and these things that are expanding my perspective. And I think what I really need for my Substack to be is like this place that grows with me and allows me to kind of like explore these different topics. And so when I think about it from a year from now, I hope that it continues to evolve and continues to grow. And some people might follow along with me, and some people might be like, all right, I got what I needed and I'm out. And that's wonderful too. Because if they feel fulfilled and they got what they needed and they moved on, that's wonderful. And if they want to hang around and see what's next and see what's possible when you walk away from kind of the blueprint and try to create your own life, then that's what I'm here for.
And for many in America, it's super early in the day still. So I really am grateful that you are here today. And I bet so many now fell in love with you, Ryan, and said, oh, I love this guy so much. How can we connect with you? How can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, my Substack is The Unsteady Ascent, or Ryan Hennessey. And I just recently created an Instagram account, The Unsteady Ascent, as well. Otherwise, I have a website, which is actually my like professional face, which would be ryan-hennessey.com. And that's where you'd find writing, coaching, everything that I offer.
Yeah, super, Ryan. It was delightful. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me.